Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at a fantastic attack played by Komodo Dragon against Scorpio in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. This was also a game that was requested in the comments to one of the previous videos, so very glad to oblige. So most people think about Stockfish and Leela when it comes to engine help for their analysis, but well, I always say it to anyone who'll listen that it's well worth having Komodo as well as an analysis engine, particularly in positions where the initiative is of great importance. And I think this is a very good case in point. Here in the game, Komodo at every step chooses the most aggressive way of playing, and yeah, it may not be better than what Stockfish and Koivisto came up with in my engine matches, but certainly to me it looks way more scary than whatever Stockfish and Koivisto came up with. So I mean, it's really a completely different perspective on play at times, and yeah, I mean, this just leads to an absolutely wonderful game here. So the opening was kind of an offbeat opening that I've actually played a reasonable amount. You know, I was playing a lot of offbeat openings when I came back from a long break from chess, and this one is quite interesting. Just some sort of Sicilian. White plays quite well. It's a good reaction this to just set up a double pawn centre. And then I was normally playing d5 in this position, and actually we've had a few games with this in the TCEC, and turned out quite well for white, but not necessarily so terrible for black. The opening book though was fairly passive: d6, h3, stopping bishop g4, knight f6, bishop d3, castles, knight c3. And essentially white's got everything that he could possibly want from the opening. Double pawn centre, nice and solidly protected. Yeah, black's really got to try and find some sort of plan, but yeah, not so easy. I mean, basically a clear advantage for white. So when I ran my my engine matches, both Stockfish and Koivisto actually wanted to play the move e5. And after d5, we're in some sort of King's Indian structure. Quite a good one for white. I mean, white's e4 pawn is nicely protected. This bishop's also well placed on c2, because you know, when black eventually plays f5, you go e takes f5, g takes f5, and then the bishop on c2 is pointing towards the h7 square, which, you know, makes the king a little nervous. But it's sort of decent. Actually, both Stockfish and Koivisto were playing exactly the same moves as black, just playing for f5, and then we're getting this sort of typical structure. And I mean, we've seen quite a few of these. White stands pretty well, really. There's not that much danger of an attack on the king side from black. We've got some nice squares for knights to come in, and well, if you play e4, then there's always the possibility of g4, which can be very strong. So I mean, generally very nice for white this, but you know, a decent way of playing for black. At least with e5, you're getting some sort of a foothold in the centre. Scorpio plays something, I mean, also very interesting, but much more risky, and that's to go a6, castles, and b5. So black really going for looking for queenside development, very sensible, and well, also introducing some idea like b4 just to disrupt the white position. But well, Komodo reacted very aggressively, played e5. Very logical, of course. You know, black's not really exerting much control yet of the centre, in particular, you know, the light squares. So might as well strike at the black knight there. Knight fd7, and now this is the, you know, the first major divergence point for Komodo from other engines. And yeah, I mean, you know, I'm running these tests on 94 threads, so I mean, really powerful hardware. So. And I gave you know, Stockfish and Koivisto about you know, 3 or 4 different chances to play the move e6, but they both preferred actually bishop e4, and after rook a7, bishop f4, knight b6, and then well, Koivisto was wanting to take on d6 and play rook e1, and Stockfish was playing rook c1. d takes c5, knight takes c5, and actually quite interestingly going for an IQP position, but where black's going to find it difficult to get developed, just because there's always ideas of knight c6. So this knight on b8 is going to have a few problems. Yeah, I mean, a very sensible way of playing, and I think you sort of say safer than what Komodo did, but yeah, Komodo played e6. F takes e6, which is really aggressive, just getting up a pawn. It also, the e6 pawn, well, it is on the on a half open file here, so you can imagine that white will be able to recapture that pawn on e6 somehow. And of course, what it's also doing, it's weakening the g6 and h7 pawns by dragging the f pawn away from it. And the impressive thing here is how Komodo manages to weave all these weaknesses together to build up a huge kingside attack. The first move that's actually not that obvious is to play a4. So, and this again was not something that Stockfish and Koivisto were doing by default. They were going more for rook e1 first, and then playing a4, and then playing knight g5. And going after the e6 pawn, but Komodo's idea is completely different. So a4, b takes a4 played. If you go b4, we go knight e2, and well, we're going to get an extra unit to attack e6. So that worked out pretty well. I mean, this was what was happening in the game, which was in the games between Stockfish and Koivisto. Both Koivisto and Stockfish wanted to do this with black, but yeah. I mean, in general, white was doing quite well. Black's position is not very solid, and yeah, the double pawns, yeah, for the moment they don't really have much effect there. So yeah, for example, knight f8, h4, queen e8, d5 was being played, by this is Stockfish against Koivisto, and white was really in control. So b takes a4 played, knight g5, knight f6, and now this great move d5. So, what is the idea of d5? Well, first of all, we're putting pressure, of course, on the e6 pawn, but we're also doing something else, and something rather sneaky. And well, after d5, Scorpio played the move a5. Actually, not worrying whether white's going to put something on e6. To be honest, if you put a pawn on e6 like this, it's not really that that bothersome. And well, what we're going to play is knight c6. And why does Scorpio want this move a5? Well, the idea is that if you go rook a4, we can go knight b4 and block in the rook. Block in the rook? Why would you want to block in the rook? Well, you'll see why. Because after rook a4, Scorpio played knight a6, and now Komodo played rook h4. So, I mean, this whole idea of Komodo, then, starting with this move, e6, it's been very impressive. I mean, a4, so first of all, weaken up the king side, just weaken up the queen side as well, and then create this channel along the fourth rank to be able to bring in the rook and swing it over to the king side. Really, really impressive play. So, I mean, I'd be assuming that that black's already lost here, but actually, apparently, it's still sort of tenable for black, only just incredibly difficult to do so. So, knight c5 played, and now Komodo went all in with knight takes h7. Knight takes h7, bishop g6, knight f6, and yeah, I mean, it's looks great. But it's not actually obvious how white continues here. Okay, we've managed to rip away the pawn cover in front of the black king. White's difficulty is that the queen can't get to any of the lovely squares it would like to, like g4, h5. They're covered by the knight. So what does white do? Well, Komodo's plan was planned quite some way in advance, and that's the move g4. So actually, we're throwing in this g-pawn in order to play g5, get rid of the knight, and then be able to bring the queen in. And of course, remember that if we go g5 takes f6, the g-file is open. So, well, we'll also have potential for bringing a rook into play. I mean, this is an absolutely wonderful attack. It's really incredible vision, and this is the sort of thing that I was always aiming for as a player. And just a wonderful play, simply. Now, the amazing thing is that black can still defend reasonably, and I'm not quite sure why that should be the case, really. But yeah, rook b8 was played, g5, rook b4, and yeah, again, this pawn on a5. A5 on move 14, it didn't look like a very sensible square, but we've already seen, two ideas of knight c6 to b4 to try and block out a rook along the fourth rank. And then now we're seeing rook b8 and rook b4, just trying to swap off that rook on h4, remove one of white's attacking units. So f4 played, and is this helping white in the attack, or making it more difficult? Well, probably making it more difficult in principle, because the bishop on c1 is no longer able to reach a square like h6. So yeah, I think probably this one's probably more in the way than helping white, which means means that rook b4 was actually a good defensive move. But here it goes really wrong for Scorpio. And funny enough, yeah, none of my other engines play what Scorpio played. They all play a much better defensive move. And actually, whilst playing, Komodo's evaluation, which had been pretty much at the 1.2 point, just started to drop substantially down to 0.76. And well, I ran my Komodo for over 300,000 million nodes. And well, analysing this position, it went down to 0.24 in the end. So yeah, so it's clear that that black does have a decent defence, and actually it's a very natural one for black, because what the engines are doing are playing e takes d5, king h2, just to prepare getting the king across to be able to take and play rook g1, and then e6, g takes f6, rook takes f6. And well, I mean, the beautiful thing about playing e takes d5 and e6 is that, well, first of all, we're keeping the queen defending the king side. That's nice, but it also does actually free black's position a little bit. And very importantly, what happens is that we're able to play rook b7 and defend the bishop laterally, because we've been able to take on d5 and play e6. This move knight b3 is also trying to remove an attacking unit of white's. Yeah, the knight wasn't doing that much on c5, so knight b3 takes c1. We make sure that nothing dark square is going to be able to invade after something like f5. I mean, it still looks incredibly appalling for black to me, but actually, yeah. Well, I mean, I think we were getting a mix of white wins and draws, so I mean it's clearly white's the one who's pressing, but in principle it looked like black should be able to defend. The most common way that this happened was rook g2, king f8, bishop d2, so trying to sneak out there, go bishop e1 to h4, so knight takes d2 takes played, and then bishop d7, queen d3, bishop c6, and yeah, I mean, white's this looks great on the G file, but yeah, actually this rook holds everything together. So white tries to bring the knight into play, e5 and knight g3. It's coming into h5, which is pretty dangerous. E takes f4, knight h5. But now the engines, we're seeing just a clear forced draw for black. And yeah, this was both Stockfish against Koivisto and Koivisto against Stockfish. So they were playing f3, d4. So that's why we're bringing the bishop in, just to support this f-pawn. King g1, rook e7, and we're starting to get some counterplay now. Knight f6, rook e1 check, rook f1, queen f6, rook e1 f2, takes, queen e5 check, and king d1. And yeah, the engines consider this position to be about equal. Oh, yeah, I don't know. Looks pretty scary to me, but in any case, they were able to draw this. But I think looking at this position, you really think all of the chances are white. So I think this completely justifies Komodo's choice of e6 on move 11 and all its subsequent play. I mean, I think this is so unbelievably dangerous for black that it's well worth it. Scorpio played a slightly odd move. It played queen b6, so the queen's moving away from the defence of the king side, threatening some sort of discovered attack, but we play king h1, e takes d5, g takes f6, rook f6 and rook g1. And I mean, actually queen b6 has also sort of stimulated the king to move off the g file so that rook g1 is possible. And of course, we're coming in now with queen h5 to h7 check. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what Scorpio missed there, but it was, yeah, just in general terms, it feels like, completely the wrong approach really for black. So d4 was played, queen h5, no real worries about the knight on c3, but actually king f8. Now we go knight d5. We've got this triple fork. Queen c6, king h2, just getting out of the way. And well, you just compare what's happened here, compared with what my engines were getting before, and well, there's just no comparison. Just all of the major pieces are active here, and black's not managing to give any sort of major, not managing to involve its major pieces, particularly this queen and rook in the defence of the king side. So yeah, pretty much bound to be hopeless. So rook c4 played, bishop d2, no rush there. Knight e6, bishop e4. And yeah, we're already threatening stuff like queen h8 check. That's already becoming a complete possibility. So queen e8, queen h7, rook c5, and f5. The knight's defending the bishop on g7, so we're just attacking it. And well, this just ended up as complete carnage. White's already a whole rook up, and well, there's more to come. So Scorpio did not last very long after that. A really gorgeous attacking game there from Komodo, and yeah, particularly striking that it was the only one that really went for this approach. And yeah, it's not force winning, but if you look at the danger and what black has to do in order to survive, yeah, I like this much more than the more positional approach that Stockfish and Koivisto chose in my engine games. So very, very nice play, and well, Komodo definitely seems to be up there with Stockfish, and is going to be challenging for the super final, looks like, unless Leela has something amazing to show. Well, we'll find out in the final double round robins. All right then, thanks very much for watching this. If you like the video, why not give a like or subscribe to the channel, or even take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. Chock-a-block full of great engine games and fantastic tips for working with engines. But thanks very much for watching the video, and hope to see you next time.